Welcome back to another episode of Biz and the Bees, where we explore the strategies behind great businesses. Today, our guest is Joe Morgan, the founder of a consultancy called Safe Inspired You. I had the pleasure of meeting Joe a few months back in Nashville through a mutual friend of ours, Ann Howard, and I was immediately struck by his focus on the human side of leadership. We're going to be talking about that topic that's top of mind for every leader right now, and that's how to build a stable, high-performing team in incredibly unstable times. With market uncertainty and the rise of AI, creating a secure and motivated team culture can feel harder than ever. Joe's work is all about tackling that challenge head on. Joe, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show today.
No, I'm glad to be here. I too enjoyed our conversation. If you remember, I sat at the bar by myself, not realizing that the whole group was around the corner. So I thought I'd missed the meeting. And then I realized maybe I'll pursue this a little bit. So as part of my human connection, I did go on a journey. So I found you guys. Yeah, it was
That's
fun.
right.
Really
Well, you made
fun
a you
night.
made a great entry, and you made a big impression on me that night, and I
Well, it's
appreciate you
great.
taking time to connect with us. So,
Yeah.
before we jump in too deep, tell us a little bit about your journey and the company that you started, and
Yeah.
just give us the highlights around Safe Inspired You.
Sure. Yeah. The whole intention around be safe, be inspired, be you is to create a safe space or an environment where the my vision can come to life, which is to create environments where dialogue leads to impact. It always has to lead someplace, and you don't want it to be arbitrary. So if you can help guide it, that matters a lot. And my purpose in life is to help people see the unseen and do wicked awesome things with the discovery. So when you get to know me, wicked connects back to my roots, which is Massachusetts, outside of Boston, and
That's right.
I'm blessed to have, my wife is my best friend. We've been married for 42 years. We're really fortunate. And behind me are some of the people that, taught me about the intensity or the need for intentional human connection. One woman off my right ear is my grandma that lived to be 100, and she was the one that kind of taught me that first. So I've carried that through my career. I've done a lot of different things. I'm an engineer, and I also have had the pleasure of running a variety of different companies. And I think this topic that you teed up is really important because I ran a lot of manufacturing companies. And I think when you
Mhm.
work with people that um, at times can work check to check, it's really important for you to understand that through an empathy lens, which has been a journey I've been on for a long time.
Yeah, and that empathy is a thing that's a skill that not as many people think have it actually have it. There's a lot of
Right.
sympathy, but not as much empathy.
I completely agree with you on that. I'm one of
Yeah.
them, actually. I took a Gallup poll 25, 30 years ago, and empathy was very low on my list, and I thought I was empathetic, and actually, as it turned out, I was looking at people through my lens, hoping that I could influence them by my view of them instead of sitting on their side of the table, and I began doing that in a purposeful way. I'm far from perfect, but it's something I wake up each day trying to do, which I is a big part of what you're talking about today on this topic, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll share with you the way empathy was explained to me. The difference between those two was a guy drew a picture of a man sitting at the bottom of a hole, right? So it's this big moat, and he's sitting at the bottom. And he said, a sympathetic man stands at the top and says, "You poor pitiful soul." And he sympathizes. He has sympathy for him in the bottom of the hole. An empathetic man crawls down in the hole and sits with him. Doesn't try to get him out.
Yep.
He just sits down in the hole with him and empathizes in his situation from his point of view. And I think you described that very well in the lens description there. So I love that. That's a great view.
Yeah, my whole thing, and you and I talked about Dialogue Miles, which is a platform that I have, is,
Mhm.
that's a big part of that, is see the world as another person does without your voice, just with your
Yeah.
with your ears, and that's what I try and do. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard because you wanna say something, but you just really ought to pay more attention. Anyway, good
That's
stuff.
right. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Love it. So let's jump into your business and some of your philosophy around that, right? So you started a company called Safe Inspire You. You told us a little bit about what that is. The name in and of itself is very characteristic of the mission that you're on, I think.
Yeah.
In your own words, though, what's the core problem that you set out to solve for leaders? And what's the foundational philosophy behind how you help them create teams that are both safe and inspired?
That's a lot. That's a long walk we're gonna take someday we can get, but we'll do this in a short
Yeah,
amount of
do,
time.
do the highlight version
Yeah.
so I can prep for the walk.
Yeah, exactly. So on the safe side, be safe. It's be safe, be inspired, be you. Be safe is to create a multi-dimension environment that recognizes that people need physical, emotional, intellectual, and in today's world, you mentioned AI earlier, data. People need to feel confident and comfortable that all of that is going to be handled in the most appropriate way. So that's the be safe part. I've started meetings with safety and health for the last 30 years. It's just I'm an engineer that way, so that's really important to me. Inspired, different than passion. I always ask people like, what is that thing that's most important to you that drives you? And I want to organize my business around that in some way. And a lot of leaders fear that someone's going to say, I don't love the business. This is a job to enable me to be a musician on the weekend or whatever. And I'm like, let's embrace that because I bet there's a cohort of people, unless it's a one person company, that probably do the same thing and I can, or having a similar interest. So that's the inspired piece. Passion to me is part of that for sure. Motivation is less. I think motivation is more like an alarm clock. Like I'm not that for you, but if you tell me what inspires you, I'll help you climb that mountain. And then you is capital YOU in my company intentionally, because each of us has a unique thing, a unique attribute. And I think great leaders help accentuate that. And that's part of that empathy. You're not going to get to that if you don't have a safe environment because people aren't going to be vulnerable. And if they are, then you're going to really understand their inspiration and what they want to celebrate in their life. And I think if you can do that, tough conditions in business are not only seen by the top person, they're seen by everyone. So everyone brings their view at a reasonable amount of time that we can act upon it together. So that's kind of my philosophy is create that space where people feel confident that they can bring the truth to the table and then act upon it.
I think I love that. I love that explanation, a word that I keyed in on what when you were talking was vulnerability.
Mhm.
You know, as people, particularly people in a job, we're often taught not to be that. You don't ever want to say I don't know something or I don't
Mhm.
understand or
Right.
there's you don't want to have necessarily questions in a lot of I've been in environments where it's incredibly difficult to ask an honest question or to get truly vulnerable with somebody else. And I think creating that space inside of a work environment, particularly like you said, manufacturing is a difficult one
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
you know it's not the same as sort of thought leadership positions that I've been a part of. So I think that vulnerability is a key thing, and creating that environment where it's, to your point, safe to be vulnerable. That is a trick and a knack that if you've got sorted out is it could be very, very helpful.
But you know what's part of that too is that sometimes people, because they don't live in a multidimensional world, everyone lives in a bubble of some sort, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
the bubble's a really big bubble, and sometimes it's a teeny bubble. And I have found everyone knows stuff. Everyone knows stuff. And just a small digression. The reason that the intellectual part of safety came into my safety diamond was and I've told the story 1,000 times, is this guy, Billy Mulroy, was a fork truck driver, and I was hired to do fork truck training. And he said, Joe, have you ever driven a fork truck? I'm like, no, I haven't. He said, don't you think it'd be a good idea that you drive one before you start trying to teach people? Because otherwise you're just the theoretician. So this is Billy
Right.
who has the helmet on driving. He's warehouse manager, right? So he threw a piece of pallet on the floor and he said, "Get up in there and drive over the pallet." And there was no suspension. It was awful. And
It is.
I got the point. And so he taught me so much pragmatic stuff and invited me out to have a beer with the guys. And I just sat and listened to their stories about what it was really like to make the products, to work in the manufacturing. And to me, that changed changed my life and perspective.
But empathy, right? That empathy created a
Totally.
place of vulnerability for them to
Yep.
feel safe to do that. That's an awesome we have all these vicious cycles in life. I think that's a awesome cycle to have.
Yeah.
So that's super cool to hear that story. I appreciate you sharing that.
Uh,
Um So let's move on to question two, and it
Yeah.
comes down to a little bit of this safety and vulnerability. The idea of psychological safety feels more critical than ever. We talked a little bit about creating that space in different companies and different types of companies. Um, Particularly right now, we're in a period of constant change. Like there's a lot of market volatility, new technologies, shifting work models, new economies with the AI economy coming online, and all the things that that's going to mean. Um, when leaders are under, in your experience, when leaders are under immense pressure to just hit numbers, how do you convince them that focusing on these things, team safety, inspiration, the U factor, isn't just a soft luxury that they would like to have, but it's an essential strategy for their stability and performance going forward?
Well, I think it goes back to what the philosophy of the leader is, going back to your earlier comment. If your philosophy is um, only about the outcomes and only about not about the journey, but only about the outcomes, the last time you're going to try and influence, or the worst time you're going to try and influence or change someone is when they're not getting the outcomes that they want. They're not going to listen to you, right? So I think the time that you want to do that is in the formative stages of the plan. It has to become incorporated within the structure and the plan. And honestly, a lot of people don't have the gene that says, I care about those things. So great leaders will surround themselves with people that do, not be phony about it, but recognize it in a different way than saying this is going to be my agenda every minute of every day. But they will surround themselves with people that will execute on those elements that you described. But I do think that even for people that don't typically wake up wanting to do that kind of stuff, there's data available that will correlate the importance of that with performance. Now, the issue that you run with AI, there's not a lot of data yet. It's too soon. And so people live in that world of fear. I want to be the first mover. And then you read an article that came out, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, that said less than, half of the initiatives have had an ROI. So that scares people. They're like, oh my gosh. And then you have the morality of AI versus the financial performance potential of AI, and you have that happening. So I do think that there has to be a bit of patience. If you have patience, sometimes you don't because your business is in a really difficult situation. But I do think, if you have a board of directors, I do think that much of the behavior that you're talking about has to be embedded there too, because if you have a leadership team or a CEO or an executive suite that does care about the elements that you mentioned, but the people that I report to don't, they only talk about numbers, you know what's gonna happen. Eventually, it chips away at it. So it can't be just one group or one person. Ultimately, it has to become part of the fabric, and I believe that the way to do that is experiential and data, not just the feel good. It has to make concrete sense. And the good news is that there's a lot of data that supports it. So
Right. Who sets the in your experience and people companies that are successful at implementing these things? Who is setting that tone? Is it tip? I have my own opinion, but I wanted to get your. Is it top down? Is it bottom up? Can it be either? Or is there a specific formula that kind of drives setting the mentality of caring about people and their safety and their needs other than hitting a number?
it it 100 in my view, in my experience, 100% has to be driven by the CEO of the company. If the CEO doesn't believe in that stuff, it's never going to happen. But the way it works though is everyone from the bottom all the way up has to have trust and belief that it's not just the CEO that believes it, but the entire organization, C-suite, middle management, all the way down, will make it happen. So that's
So
been
that
my
that's
experience. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree?
I do. I think the CEO sets the tone.
Yep.
I tell my kids, as the where the head of the snake goes, that's where the snake crawls. It's not necessarily directly behind it, but if you watch a snake on the ground, his body follows where the head went. And as the head of a company, that's where your company is going to go. You do have to have people that follow along because if the rest of the snake just laid on the ground, it's not very effective,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
I think it's a very, I think that's 100% right in that you have to, from that leadership seat, inspire people to follow and set the right vision in that direction. So I'd agree
Yeah,
with that.
and I also think, kind of building off of the 2 questions you've asked me, I do believe strongly that, the tone does have to be set, but you have to be consistent. So, I have seen
Mhm.
people that if you have the pleasure of seeing them, they will reinforce, but they're not proactively engaging in the community of the business. And the way that you get this to work is you have to be engaged. And when people see you, you show up in a consistent way. You can't show up in like 20 different ways and hope people see the single thread that's buried in underneath.
Right.
You have to lead with the conviction of caring about people. That's why everything I do is intentional human connection. Everything is people centered because I believe in that, and we're seeing that actually even, post the COVID experience. I mean, people like the independence, and then all of a sudden it became detrimental psychologically and from a business performance standpoint. So, I think there's a line in the sand that every leader has, that their fundamental belief, whatever that is, and then you stay with it. You don't change it. So,
Yeah. And look, that human connection is very real. That's why I came to Nashville. That's why I
okay,
invited that group
well,
of
great.
people. Like,
Yep,
I had a
I
team
agree.
of people that I was connected with, and I knew that they had connections, and I knew that that was a missing thing. And
Yeah.
that is why we're doing those dinners. So the next time I'm out and we have one, you'll be
No,
back on that invite list for
no,
sure.
well,
So
thank you. And it's interesting about that too is when you don't know the people, you don't know that the best part of that event was after dinner. And I didn't go to that, and I was disappointed that I couldn't, because after spending a couple hours, I said, "The best part of this is gonna be when I'm not there." And that's that whole relational thing, you know?
yeah, that's it. Well, we'll do it again, and we'll have those couple hours
It's
next
gonna be
time
great.
for
We'll
sure.
go for a walk too.
And look
Get you
forward.
sweating.
Absolutely,
I'll get you thirsty.
absolutely. That's right. All right. Last question I have for you.
Yeah,
We're gonna dig into a little bit more about the destabilization that AI is
yeah.
bringing because
Uh-huh,
it's a very real thing. We're
uh-huh.
certainly seeing it in our customer base, and we're hearing it from some of our peers. So AI it used to be out on the horizon, but now it's here, and it's
Yeah,
and it's here daily differently. I think there are many, many different models and access points that are coming available to the general public that weren't there yesterday, even, and you almost have to check in daily to see where you're at. There's a lot of fear around that, and a lot of job replacement fear, and just the fear of the pace at which things are changing. Um, Looking through your lens, where do you see opportunity
yep.
in this new economy, and how can leaders use this moment of technological disruption to actually strengthen their team, to build more trust and to become more stable in a human-centric culture?
Yeah, I think, being an engineer, particularly working in manufacturing, I'm not saying robotics was exactly the same, but in the time that robotics became a big factor in process
Mm.
automation, there was a fear of job loss and everything was going to go away. So it had a similar feeling to me at a very different stage. Now, I'm not going to get into the magnitude of the one versus the other, but the conversation wasn't dissimilar. It was, oh my gosh, all the jobs are going to be gone, da 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 da. Da. And it turned out that to some degree that was true in certain areas, and then there were new things created. One thing that I find fascinating to me actually is I have a broad portfolio, so I don't work in just one area. So if you think about it from the engineering and um, like operational creation side of my business, there's huge opportunity. Why is that? Because of data and energy management. So it's unprecedented how much money is being spent in those categories. So that no one's as worried about AI because the opportunity to support what is the result of AI, which is more data, more energy consumption, more processing, et cetera. So that's one. That's kind of a positive thing. On the negative side, I was CEO of a company that was in the business forms industry.
Right.
So I was hired to transform the company to a new place. So if you think about electronic medical records, Electronic medical records, when I was a kid, were paper forms, basically containers for information. If you look at today, electronic medical records have essentially eliminated the need for all of that. So all of those companies, all of those businesses went away. So I think there are some examples that are in the past in healthcare, in financial services, and highly regulated industries. As leaders, I think what we can do is always provide context. So to me, if we just focus on AI, most CEOs don't know what they're talking about. And everybody's trying to find that guy, that woman that can come in that's the brilliant one. There aren't that many of them. So I think we are kind of figuring this out together. So I do think the reference points of things like robotics, things like other transformations are really important to people. But the reality is, in all of those situations, jobs were lost and people had to either transform themselves or they were on the other side of it. And so it's not fair to say it'll be okay because it probably won't be okay in the way that we're thinking about it today. But I do think being clear on trying to figure it out together and being honest about the potential implications. I'm big on scenario planning. So I think in leadership, we should talk about what are the potential scenarios in our business, how it can help us, how it could hurt us, how it might then translate to the individual. I think that's really, really important. But the truth is that all the boards I'm on, all the boards I interact with, most of the CEOs I talk to, it's all on the agenda, but no one's really clear on what it's going to do and the outside. And there's a morality aspect to this, which is very unusual as compared to most business things that have entered in my career. There is a just because you can doesn't mean you should element to this. And so that's another part that makes it hard. I just think we have to have forums where we can talk about it. And I think we have to be honest about what we know. I mean, I have 6 agents. If you asked me a year ago about agents, I'd be like, let me read about that. And now I'm like, man, I can scale my business with agents. I have agents. So
And
now I,
you're writing. Are you writing those personally?
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah,
I love hearing that.
yeah. So
I
like,
can't wait to hear more about that on our walk as well.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool. It's amazing. I mean, I use
Yes.
it a lot. It's really awesome.
It is good stuff. I think that you mentioned a couple of important points. One is the data aspect, and it's actually both things are around data. One is I don't know that companies have enough. It's going to sound derogatory, but I don't mean it that way. I don't know that they have enough intelligence, organized intelligence, to really apply artificial intelligence effectively. So I think you can absolutely slap an AI overlay over your existing data structure and it will produce something, but it's not going to necessarily be helpful or beneficial. And I think we're seeing a lot of clients from our side that are AI, and it's like, all right, that's great, but what is it gonna? It's not actually gonna do what you think it's gonna do. Let's get this others. Let's get
Yeah.
your house in order first. Let's get that done first. The other piece of that that has come up a lot for us is this idea of you are a data company, whether you know it or not. Almost every company that's
That's
out
right.
there right now is a
Right.
data company. You have data and it's important to your business.
Yep.
And a lot of CEOs don't really consider I'm in manufacturing, I just make stuff. And it's like, no, that's true. You make a widget. That is 100% true. It's the
Yeah.
what you do with it after. It's the data you collect along the way and what you do with it that really is the value of your
Right.
business these days. Trying to convince people that can be a little
Yeah.
bit of a challenge. I think AI is going to help do that because it's going to expose it faster.
You,
Um,
you know, what you made me think of is a conversation I had recently is if you think about an aspirational vision for a business, which is
Mhm.
probably having an understanding of the what of your business, but how it actually implicates or impacts society, right? How does it actually affect others? And then there are people that are very mission focused that say, we do this. I think what you're talking about can enable the aspiration. And because of that, we can the data we have in our businesses around what never very rarely surfaces correctly, and therefore the aspiration feels nebulous. I think actually AI could enable us to capture the data around the what and translate it much more directly to the aspiration and give us huge advantage going forward because we should have more predictability, more advanced knowledge, all of that stuff. I'm very, very excited about that. I think that can be really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. I
But
love that. I love that idea. Um, any closing thoughts or parting points you wanna add in here before we kind of wrap up?
I think that we
Anything we
are in
didn't
a
cover?
we're in an unsettling time, but it's not the first time we've been in an unsettling time. I will say the vectors of insights and things that are happening are more than most times, especially in a binary world or a time that didn't have all the communication vehicles. But I do think, like I have a newsletter called The Pebble in the Pond, where I try and extract the handful of things that I experience each week and create some kind of a provocative communication that get people thinking. So what I would leave it with is I think what you're doing here is really important because it's critical thinking and it's teeing up some things that don't actually come to conclusion. It just starts the conversation. And so I think these are the types of things that we should continually do. So I applaud you for what you're doing and I think it's just the start. So I hope that the you can accumulate all this insight and it'll really have an impact on people. It's good stuff.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. Kind words, man.
Of
Appreciate
course.
that.
Awesome.
Well, look, this has been incredibly insightful. I appreciate
Thanks,
you
Phil.
taking the time to speak with me this afternoon. I think the key takeaway from me is that as our work becomes more technologically advanced, moves faster, gets smarter, the need for intentional human connection does not go away. It becomes more important as the glue to hold us all together as we're sort of racing through this space and time.
Yeah,
It becomes the ultimate competitive advantage, and I really appreciate you sharing our expertise with us on that topic.
for sure.
For our listeners, as a wrap up, who want to learn more about you and your work, what's the best place to find them and get in touch with you?
Joe.morgan at safeinspiredyou.com or visit my website at safeinspiredyou.com. And if you ever want to go for a walk, Dialogue Miles is my platform for empathy and human connection. So join me and you and I will tell our story soon.
Absolutely, I'm going to get on that calendar with you as soon as we wrap this call up.
Thanks.
All
Awesome.
right. Well,
Good
thanks.
stuff.
We'll be sure to send you a link to the show in the notes. That's all the time we have for this episode of Biz and the Bees. Big thank you to Joe Morgan and all of you for listening.
Thank you so
Enjoyed the
much.
conversation. Please take a moment, subscribe, and share with somebody who could use it. And we'll see you next time.